and even leaves some seeing life in 2D. You probably haven't heard of it. It's thought to affect 1 in 100 people, making it as common as OCD and schizophrenia. It's called depersonalization, derealization disorder. But there's no mention of it in GP training, meaning doctors are failing to diagnose people. And even when those with the condition do seek help, there is only one specialist clinic in the whole of the UK, which doesn't treat children. Now, a leading expert has told this programme that provisions must be put in place to improve awareness amongst medical professionals and access to care for patients. Our reporter Adam Ely has more.
It was a very sort of sudden flick of a switch, that everything suddenly became very two-dimensional. Things felt really alien and threatening.
It's a condition most GPs have never heard of, but 1 in 100 people are thought to have depersonalization disorder.
Everything seems unreal, like there's a fog between what you see and what your brain interprets.
The mental health condition leaves people feeling disconnected from their own body and the world around them.
And suddenly your flat will suddenly feel like a film set, and my possessions feel like props.
Medical professionals are failing to diagnose it, and treatment can take years, even decades, to find.
Of my GP colleagues, I would be very surprised if any of them had heard of depersonalization disorder.
Experts say action needs to be taken, but the question is whether it will come anytime soon.
I felt confused, I felt alien.
Sarah's an actress. Since university, she's had several chronic episodes of depersonalization disorder, a mental health condition that makes the world seem unfamiliar and unreal. It's often triggered by moments of acute stress or anxiety. For Sarah, it started while studying for her final exams.
I've described it since as a feeling of having emotionally flatlined, so everything suddenly became very two-dimensional. Things felt really alien and threatening. It felt like two parts of me had sort of separated. So my physical being in the world and my mind. And suddenly your flat or somewhere that is very, very familiar to you will suddenly feel like a film set, and my possessions feel like props.
1 in 100 people, more than 600,000 in the UK, are estimated to be living with the condition, known in full as depersonalization derealization disorder. It can start at any time, but usually in adolescence or early adulthood. It's believed to start as a defense mechanism, helping people to cope during a period of severe anxiety or trauma by switching off reality. It can also be triggered by drug use, such as cannabis or ecstasy. But while in many people the symptoms will pass, in others they can remain for decades if untreated. Those with the condition report a sense of detachment from the world and self, seeing the world as if through a haze or fog. The world appearing in 2D as if objects are flat like in a cartoon, watching themselves as if from afar in an out-of-body experience, feeling detached from their own body parts and an emotional numbing.
Relationships you know you value deeply suddenly lose their essential quality. You know that you love your family, but you sort of know it academically rather than feeling it in the normal way.
People ask you if you love them, if how you feel, and you can't say I love you if you're emotionally blunt.
Daniel Bell lives in Chatham in Kent, where he cares for his dad. He developed depersonalization disorder 4 years ago as a result of anxiety, and it's never gone away. Like many others, he now sees the world in 2D, as Sarah has done previously.
I was reading a book, I was holding the book, and suddenly my hands holding the book looked like a picture of a pair of hands holding a book. So I felt this separation between the physical world and my perception of it.
It's literally like you're watching a cartoon, is the only way I can explain it. And everything just compresses and flat. You still know that if you look up the road, there's a house this side, that's past that point, because your brain tells you, but what you physically see is flat and lifeless.
On occasion, Daniel has out-of-body experiences too.
I'd be working on my bike and I had the feeling that I was like beside myself, looking at myself, and it was horrible. It petrified me. It was one of the most disturbing things I'd ever experienced.
Daniel says his mental health has been made worse by the failure of successive medical professionals to diagnose him correctly.
Doctors, they would say I was just depressed. I was given antidepressants like I was going out of fashion. I'd have one lot, it wouldn't work. I'd try another lot, that wouldn't work. And then that's the cycle that I was going through. And I'd sit down and I'd talk to my dad, and I was in tears. And for days and weeks, I'd be crying to him. I'd be begging my dad to get help. But he can't do any more than what the doctors do. If they're saying you're just depressed and you need to take this or that, then he's helpless. He was absolutely helpless. But I felt he was the only person I could turn to. In the end, my own father was the only person I felt that I could get help from.
He says the situation only began to progress when he attempted suicide.
I tried to take my own life, and it wasn't until that happened that I was referred to secondary care. If I hadn't been referred to secondary care, I don't think I would ever have got the help I need. Me and my counsellor, we pretty much Googled what my symptoms were, and she came up to me one day and said, is that what's wrong with you? And I was like, yeah, to a T, that's what's wrong with me.
Simon, whose name we changed, also lives with the disorder. He's a newly qualified GP and says very few of his colleagues will have heard of the condition. Past studies have suggested people wait an average of 8 to 12 years for a successful diagnosis. This is despite the condition having been medically recognised for decades and being as widespread as conditions such as OCD and schizophrenia.
I think of my GP colleagues, I would be very surprised if any of them had heard of depersonalization disorder. I imagine there's going to be many people suffering from the condition who will have had a late diagnosis and worsening of the symptoms because of the fact that they're not diagnosed or treated at an early stage. There was nothing in my training at all about depersonalization disorder. I never came across it both during my training as a GP or in my training at medical school. If you compare this to disorders such as OCD and bipolar disorder, if it has the same prevalence, then it should therefore have the same coverage.
The Royal College of GPs says mental health is a key part of its curriculum and that training on complex mental health problems is being developed. The Royal College of Psychiatrists says knowledge of the condition must be improved. Simon says before he developed the condition himself, he wrongly diagnosed at least 2 of his own patients.